So I described the experience. I wanted you to imagine some of the things that my kids had to encounter. So as the senior class administrator last year, I had to use a lot of technology. I had to be innovative in order to ensure that kids could thrive, they could graduate on time, and they could have the basic needs of what they needed to be a student and a senior and a graduate. I was sharing earlier that we used Admentum a lot. So I don't know if you're using that in your current practice, but Admentum is a great software that you can use to help students catch up on credit, do original credit, and so forth. So I'm going to dive into that a little later, but I want to share a quote that I learned from a conference. That quote is, "Every experience a scholar has moved them closer to graduation or closer to withdrawal." And our goal as educators is to ensure that our kids graduate, not only graduate, but graduate on time. So my topic of today is that technology and teaching and learning is our power, right? We heard the presentation earlier about how we can have blended learning classrooms, use standard-based learning to help our kids learn. But one thing I want to remind us of is that it's not about the technology, but it's about the human, right? I described that story and shared the story earlier because a lot of kids, they decide to withdraw from school, or they say, I'm not going to make it. It's not going to work out for me. So it's very important that if we are dealing with some of the shortages with our teaching staff, that we're being innovative in what we're providing in that school. And I describe it in three pieces. What do you see? What do you feel? And what do you hear? So we want to ensure that our kids are seeing things that help them feel a part of that bar that we saw earlier. Yes, it's good to have curriculum, but what about that culture? How do they feel as they're transitioning through their school day? And then last but not least, what are they hearing? Do you have music during the transitional periods? Do you have things happening in a classroom for the morning news show? So we want to ensure that our kids are seeing, feeling, and hearing, right? So point one, technology can be implemented strategically to maximize the humans in school. So I started with my senior class 2 years ago. When I first met them, I was like, oh, we're so glad that you're here. We're hoping that you can give us a quality senior class experience. They were juniors at that time. I said, yeah, no problem. I was like, in the back of my mind, I said, I don't know if this is going to work out. So I said, wow. And I looked at their data. At that time, I did not infuse technology, but I was using more of my engineering skills, some basic items to make things happen. So I decided to build this dashboard using Google Sheets. How many of you use Google Sheets? A lot of them. I love it. I created these macros. I was running in the background. But essentially, for a graduate to be successful in Montgomery County Public Schools, they need a couple of things: 22 credits, 175 SSL hours, and 4 tests. So I'm very corny. I'm a mathematician. So I made this video at the beginning of the year. I was like 22,754. And I had a nice little rhyme to it. They probably thought I was corny, but it's all good. But it was something that they could remember, right? When you think about the see, the feel, and the hearing. So I did that. I built my dashboard. Now I made this real for the people that were on the team. All of the people that were supporting, whether it was a counselor, a team leader, whoever, the PCC, the parent community coordinator, everyone could see, oh, we have 100 some kids that need 75 SSL hours still. Or they could see, oh, 30 kids still have not completed their 4 high school graduation tests. For a lot of us, we may be saying, oh, that's such a small thing. They could have knew that from just looking at their transcripts. But that takes a lot of time. As we learned earlier, we want to reduce the time. We want to reduce the labor, the thought of the manufacturing piece, and really build a technology-driven environment. So I not only was using technology, but I was using data and instruction to kind of work with our team and drive this. So that's the strategic part. That's point one. Here are some priorities. Number one, we need to leverage technology to amplify the importance of humans in the system. So I kind of spoke to that a little bit, how you're leveraging technology to ensure that every kid felt that they mattered. Every staff member on our team felt that they mattered. So not only were we acknowledging the kids, giving them tools to help them be successful, but we would also acknowledge staff. So we have what we call grad validation meetings. So that was like maybe 3 times a year during the school year, the senior year. The purpose of that space was to share out, hey, this is what's happening with our senior class. We have a total of 400 and such seniors, so you're sharing all this data and you're saying this is their current progress. So we made that a little bit more real. We started infusing what's happening in the culture of the building. How are these seniors actually being successful? So we would bring out our drum line, cheerleading, just different components of our school that our seniors connected to. And we would say, this is helping our seniors be successful in the school day. Now, is every senior connected to those opportunities? No. But you should have some other opportunities in the building that you can connect them to. We also would bring in partners. So our first grad validation meeting, we brought in our PPW, PCC. We partnered with the local organization, MoCo Reconnect. So MoCo Reconnect is an organization similar to Edmentum, but it was a small school essentially. So when a kid would say, because my big number of the year was, what is my graduation rate, right? I wanted every kid to cross that stage. So when a kid would come to me or the counselor and say, this kid is going to drop out of school, I said, okay, that's totally fine, but no, 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 no. Let's take it a step back. Before they get ready to drop out, what are some of the things that we can do to connect them to their purpose, their passion, or that person that will make it happen for them? So that's like one of my mantras. I have the 3 Ps. I call it passion, people, purpose. So, out of those 3, the passion, what are you passionate about? Who are the people that you need to connect to? Or who are the people that can help you make this happen? And then your purpose, your why. Never forget your why. So like now, our ILT, we're going through this process of we're reading about Simon Sinek. Have y'all heard of him? So he calls it the golden circle. He's a madman, but I love it. Like, it's my engineering side of my mind. So he said he would go to work and the golden circle was birthed out of his pain. He would be at work. He was like, I know how to do this. Like, I know how to build computers. That's kind of where I was in my life. I was like, I know how to build these builds. I know how to run a program. That's easy. I knew what to do, but he said I did not understand my why. There's a great book he has produced. It's called Leaders Eat Last. If you haven't read it, check it out. Dr. Addison actually gifted it to me. It's a great book. So that's the first. Yes.
Do you also find when you're talking to the seniors, or you're any dropout, right? Do you find that some of them are the most brilliant minds?
Yes, believe it or
That's
not.
what the research is showing.
Absolutely.
That the dropouts, a good portion of them are actually genius.
Yep. And
under challenged.
And what we heard earlier is more importantly, they have a story. I had a kid by the name of, I call him John Doe. I don't want to share his real name. He was failing. Well, he needed he needed to make up 26 classes. I'll never forget it. 26 classes. But the barrier that no one ever knew for his 4 years of college is the pandemic, violence in school that we heard about earlier. So his mom, a Hispanic student, he identifies as Hispanic, she had this fear of, I do not want to send my kid to school. But John Doe, he was brilliant, very brilliant. And believe it or not, he graduated because we created this like unique flight simulator plan to get him across the stage. Charlie, you're here now, so now you need to do this. And we was kind of doing what you described earlier, but in our own unique way, right? So great question. They are very brilliant. Sometimes you may have a kid, passion, people, purpose, right? a lot of kids may want to do career or they may want to do CTE. So we're very fortunate that we have a partnership with Montgomery College. We also have this internal partnership with Edison High School, where kids can actually go over, do some hands-on stuff. They can graduate with a certificate in cosmetology, carpentry, electrician. More recently, MCPS, Montgomery County, they created this pathway for CTE, where kids can invest in internships, apprenticeships. So like their senior year of high school, we had approximately 2 kids. They were finished with their dental certificate, for example. So now they're out in the real world, continuing to pursue that pathway. So that's leveraging the technology. Number 2, alignment to teaching and learning. And then I'm going to give you some time to talk to your neighbor. We're going to do a think, pair, share. So alignment to teaching and learning practice, to maximize humans in the system. And number 3, the last priority is purpose-driven data, instruction, and technology to support teaching and learning. So those 3 priorities are going to be critical as we move forward in our path, as educators, practitioners, to ensure that our kids have what they need. So I want to give you an opportunity to think about, how would you support this graduate in need? Because this was my life for like the last 3 to 4 months of my senior class experience, administrator experience, where kids would just pop up. I knew about them, but it became more real. I only have a month left, and Sally Sue, she still needs 35 SSL hours, still need a graduation test. Now, our technology dashboard was awesome. Everybody's like, oh, can we do that for every class when you think about grad validation? But at the same time, you had some kids that were still dragging their feet towards graduation. Then I also had some kids that I used these unique external partnerships with, that were finishing their GED. So we had approximately 5 kids to finish that process. So we were one of the first high schools to have kids walk across the stage that had this unique experience, because maybe they decided to withdraw like their 3rd year of high school. But at the same time, we knew that they could do it. We knew that they can make it. They were still a part of that cohort. What a lot of people did not know is the data suggests, a lot of these kids will show up in your graduation dropout rate. And you're like, oh man, where's this data point coming from? But it's because they dropped out. We did not have these unique systems or processes in place to support them.
So question, do you feel like a lot of times kids, they disengaged way earlier because they missed something way earlier, and then forever after that, they just felt left out?
That's a
They
great
never
question.
really caught up. Because, all over America,
Yeah.
teachers are telling us they're teaching to 6, sometimes 7, 8 grade spans in one class, because kids are all over the place.
They're all
That
over
tells
the
me
place.
one thing: some of them have been left way behind,
Mm-hmm.
and so demoralized.
Yeah.
And then other ones are held, back. They should have been, several grades ahead already. It's just their age pattern.
Yes.
Are you feeling that? Do you see that with kids?
Yeah. So I'm a Georgia boy. Go Dogs. We have a big game this week against Alabama, Rolling Tide. It's gonna be fun. I say that to say that in Georgia, when I was growing up, our system, we had corporal punishment. So don't let the bow tie fool you. I used to have a tough time growing up. I was that student that I described earlier. But in addition to that, with the structures of Georgia, we also had where if you did not meet the measures, you stayed back. So that was a difference for me when I came to Maryland, or transitioned to Maryland. And I say that to say we have some kids in some unique places. So I had the opportunity to do grade 11, 12, and now I'm at 10. I was in middle school and elementary, so I had the opportunity to see the whole spectrum, right?
So are you saying that you think sometimes we're failing kids forward?
I wouldn't use that term, but
I
wouldn't use that term.
But I mean, really, when you look at it, that's what's really happening.
But I would say we need to do a little more. That's what I would say.
Okay.
what do we need to do as a school system, as a local school, to ensure kids are meeting their flight tracker system, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of kids may, you think about, I love math, operation and algebraic thinking, right? A lot of kids may not have that skill yet when you think about map testing, state map testing. But how do we put the stuff in place for quality first instruction before they make it to that session of map testing to ensure that they can be successful at that skill?
Yeah.
So
part of that assessment then?
It could be assessment. It's a number of things because teaching and learning is very complex. I didn't believe that when I first transitioned to education, but it's very complex. It's very important to have a vision and a mission of how you want things to work to ensure that your whole school is believing in that, following that. Um, Teachers have time to do that, right? Because our teachers are great. I love teachers, right? They do the heavy lifting every day. I miss teaching. It's very important.
But maybe they can't all get to everything because there's so much, right? It's almost like not a human job.
And I would say, even to think about that, if I cannot get to it, what am I doing to build in those accommodations, right?
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier blended learning. I love that model. When I was in my classroom, I used it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that flight tracker system where I may have a group of kids that are studying here, doing one-step equations. I have a kid here who's on a simulation model on their Chromebook. Then I have kids up front with me that was truly just focusing in on the things that they need.
So Dr. Bostic, you created like a dashboard that essentially let students rediscover their why or kind of get back into the stream of learning rather than just completely disengage.
Yep.
Is there any pushback when you're working with students as to getting them to understand the why behind why they're in the building, why they're going through all this stuff?
It was definitely pushback. Like we had to be extra creative for some kids, right? So every child is unique in their way, right? So we had to kind of be moving the chess pieces around, so to speak, to make things happen and get kids to their graduation. So I share this. I mentioned that I experienced the entire K to 12 piece. We had preschool at my elementary school as well, pre-K. So my background, I described the student earlier. That was me. I would grow up. Sometimes things wasn't right, and our kids are experiencing that. Trauma is real, and I started to incorporate a lot more social emotional opportunities for our kids. When you think about that SSL piece, student service learning, and also, when I was in high school, I had a counselor tell me, you should probably do trade school. So we got to be real mindful of these conversations that are happening in our building and the limited mindset that some people may have, because we should challenge each other in a good way to say, hey, are these things that we should be saying to our kids? Because this is our future. One day we're going to have to go to the doctor, and Sally, Sue, and John Doe, I mentioned earlier, are going to be our doctors or lawyers, believe it or not. So that inspired me to write my own book. So I started this kids book library, so to speak. And essentially, it's just a series of books where kids from pre-K all the way to 12 can find some level of engagement to challenge them to be their best version. I always tell them that, are you being your best version of yourself today? They said, Mr. Bostic, Dr. Bostic, you're crazy. So I want to give you this as this scenario, then I want to open it up for questions or sharing out. So Amira, and you're the grade 12 administrator, and you're trying to figure it out. Think, pair, share. So maybe pair with someone by you. So think about it first. Amira faced the looming deadline of graduation with sinking grades, SSL hours with a need of 40 hours still remaining, self-doubt, feeling like she might not graduate. One night she emailed you as her administrator and her counselor that she does not or do not feel or believe she will graduate. What are your next steps? So I want to give you like a few minutes to think about that, and then maybe pair with your neighbor to think about what would be your next steps as her administrator, Amira.
Yeah, that's the first thing, is say no, right? The first thing you tell them, that's not true. get your butt in here.
Right, right.
And let's talk about this.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
I'm gonna keep going. Yeah, that's the first thing is the reassurance.
That she can do it.
Yeah, and I don't even know why you don't preemptively do that right at the beginning of the senior year.
Yes.
Just say everyone's going to. Stop stressing.
Uh-huh.
Let's make it happen.
Yes.
If you don't know how you're gonna get it done, then you need to come in right away.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also like what was done.
That age, I don't know if you're ready to that age. But you're uncertain of everything all day. Because you know you're about to launch out from the nest anyway.
Yeah.
Of course you're uncertain.
Life is going to become real.
Yeah, it becomes really unreal. Plus your hormones are raging, so you're already crazy. I don't know how you wouldn't be insecure. I almost don't understand why you don't spend a good, one day every week of senior year just letting them acclimate.
Yes.
Right? Like just let's have a social emotional day every week.
Intervene early.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's just what a time. I mean, I remember being a senior. I was so young.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember?
I remember very vividly.
I don't even know how we survived it. We did, obviously.
And we did not have as much technology then, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a different world now.
Yes.
And we're living in a particularly chaotic moment.
Yes.
This year, especially before the election.
Oh, man.
I cannot imagine what it would be like to be a senior right now.
Or an educator in the building. It's going to be,
Yeah. Like weirdness, right?
Yes.
Okay, guys.
All right, Cheryl.
Okay, give your feedback, people. You guys ready? Hey guys, what would be your answer?
All right, what will we do for Amira?
We let them go and now they're not coming back. Okay, who's gonna give a response?
You have to give time for student discourse.
Yeah.
I think part of your equation now is outside of the instructional.
Hold on, because nobody's gonna be able to hear you. Hold on. It's a tiny little microphone, but you're gonna have to hand it around.
So I think even outside of the instructional path, there is a conversation that needs to be had about having that individualized touch point. Like, who is that kid working with? Who sees that kid, and when does that kid feel seen? So I was relaying a story where we had 40 kids when HSA went live that weren't going to pay us out of 169 students graduating class, and we rolled our sleeves up and divided that group of 40 kids up into small, like 3 and 4s. And they had a mentor that sat down with them every week.
Wow.
How are you doing? Where are you going? Where's your stick point? Whatever. And we got every one of those kids across the stage. But
Nice.
The answer is you got to roll your sleeves up, show that kid that they're seen. And then once they know that they're seen, then you loop in whatever academic intervention you're going to do to make that work.
Exactly.
But that was our thought.
We talked about the importance of listening, just to, I think sometimes as educators, we're quick to jump in and solve, but sometimes not always in the ways that align with the fears and the worries and the anxieties of that student. So, if the student comes to the table and says, the barrier to graduation has been that I'm babysitting, my younger siblings from 8 to 5. The reality of creating an 8 to 5 plan, doesn't always align. So being creative with what other options we have, but that only happens by listening first.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for
Very true.
engaging in that. That was my life all year. So one of the unique things I did, for people that are listening to the podcast, and our educators here, the summer before senior year, our team, we came together. We had our data. We had the dashboard. You think about the technology, the data, teaching and learning needs. This kid may need the MSCA strategy. When you think about any people in the room who are former English teachers, we started to do these home visits. And that started to tell us a lot of information that we needed to understand why Amira, John Doe, Sally Sue, any kid would potentially be struggling during the school year. So what we did is we had our summer meeting grid, whether it was a home visit, the child coming into the school. Some cases we would go out to the local library and say, hey, meet us here. We set up a table at Four Corners. It's a neighborhood near our former location. We're in a holding school now, but off of 495. So I say that to say we have to be willing to meet our kids and families where they are, right? And that where they are is potentially, needing of admin. I need a Wi-Fi spot at home when you think about technology so I can log in to do my credit.
One of the things that we talked about was very similar to the previous group, but in response to the email, just be affirming that it is possible, right? And so part of it was probably in the student's mind thinking about school from that traditional sense of school happens between this hour and this hour. I don't see this as a possibility. And so, as you just shared, kind of meeting them where they are, having that conversation and being innovative, some of the things that you talked about was thinking about other ways for the student to see the potential of, getting to that end state is kind of what we discussed in our conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to kind of summarize everything. We heard the story. Everybody has a story. We discussed some things that we could potentially consider: teaching and learning, technology, data, instruction, standard-based learning. And we talked about, what are some of those scenarios that we may face? How do we be prepared to support kids? So I just want to leave you with, we may know what we do. We may know how to do it. Never forget your why. Never forget your imprint and the impact that you may have on a family, on a student, on the staff that you're serving or providing that coaching feedback to. So I really appreciate you for providing me with this time today. Thank you.
Thank you.